It was 30 years ago, and I can remember the morning of the big job interview. I walked up from Oxford Circus tube station in central London, past the BBC's broadcasting house, and then along the road to another building. So, it was just here. These were the doors. Oh, I really do remember going in there. Scary days. Afraid of being late, I was, of course, early. So I hung around outside for a while, trying to calm my nerves by reminding myself that at least I had my 2 pieces of paper in my bag. One full of health stories, one full of science stories. And I knew that if I was asked, what could you put in next week's Science Now as it was then, or Medicine Now, I knew I had plenty of answers to talk about there. This was what would get me through the interview. This was what would hopefully get me the job. This was my ideas list. I'm Claudia Hammond, and today I'm the presenter of radio shows on psychology, health and science. But that's now. Back in March 1995, I applied for the post of trainee producer at the BBC Radio Science Unit. Ahead of the job interview, I prepared a list of science stories to bring with me on the day. Ohmic heating, a new food preservation method developed in Chester. These are the ideas which I thought were so brand new and cutting edge at the time that they were worth broadcasting to an audience of millions. Drivers falling asleep. Sleep Research Lab in Loughborough has found that old people... So I'm revisiting them to discover what happened next. And what a list like this can teach us about how science works. Breeding robots. Alumni magazine, Sussex University. 3 people in cogs are breeding robots using Darwinian principles. They were randomly designed, and the most successful are allowed to spawn the next generation. I had come across the idea of breeding robots in the Sussex Alumni magazine, and even a couple of years before, when I was a student at Sussex, I'd always known there was something special going on in the COGS building up the hill, COGS standing for Computing and Cognitive Science. Now, I'm lucky enough to go back there to give lectures now, and I took the opportunity to meet one of the people working there at the time.
My name's Phil Husbands. I'm Research Professor of Artificial Intelligence here at the University of Sussex.
I met Phil in his old robotics lab. It's like a massive garage filled with old boxes of pieces of electronic hardware and bits of abandoned robots.
Discarded large robots.
Oh, yes. It's like a little robot graveyard.
Yeah, no, it is indeed. There's a whole
box
full of them in there.
But towering in the corner is a massive cube with transparent walls, which, if I'm being honest, looks nothing like a robot at all. No arms, no legs, no body. It's more like a box room. Yeah.
But if we go inside here...
Oh, yeah, so we can actually step in. So it's like a few metres across and a few metres high.
Yeah, and then you start to see in what's kind of special way it is a robot.
I've never thought I'd find myself standing inside a robot. It's a few metres across, and instead of a ceiling, there are rails on a gantry above us, with a robotic arm reaching down and a camera at the end.
So there's a camera and there's some sensors for detecting objects so it doesn't crash into things.
Via the complicated mechanism on rails, the arm can slide around the room.
And that's kind of functionally equivalent to a little wheeled robot down there with a camera on it moving around.
Oh, I see. So in a way it can run around on the floor. It just happens to be joined up by a big pole, in a way, to the gantry.
Exactly.
So what is it for, this strange gantry robot? It was this kind of equipment that Phil used in the early 90s to test a brand new approach to artificial intelligence and robotics. Phil and his colleagues would set up white triangles on the walls of the cube, and the task for the robot was to find the triangle and move towards it. Easy enough.
So the idea is you have a population of basically artificial DNA.
Essentially, bits of randomised code, which, as you can imagine, do not lead to very successful robots. At least not in the first generation.
Most of that initial population would do very little. In fact, quite a lot of them probably do nothing at all.
What, no, it wouldn't even move across the floor?
Yeah, it wouldn't even move or anything. Some of them would jitter about, but then you might get one that reacts in some way when it sees a white target, maybe just jitters a little bit. That would get slightly more fitness.
Fitness as in survival of the fittest. The team wanted to mimic Darwin's ideas of natural selection. They had designed a computer program that would automatically measure the robot's ability to complete the task and then create a new and hopefully improved second generation.
Those members who were more fit would be more likely to produce the offspring for the next generation. The offspring was basically mutated copies and maybe using crossovers. That created the next generation. And then you keep on doing this, and then what you find is that from generation to generation, the best behaviours get better and better. And we decided, can we risk leaving it overnight? We decided, yeah, let's do it, because I'm not going to stay here all night. So I was running overnight, came back next morning, boom, and it was doing the task, which was quite a magical moment for us.
Just overnight, it had done it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Was that exciting?
Yeah, very exciting, yeah. So it was quite a magic moment when it actually worked.
And what was the idea behind doing it this way, having the robots breed, if you like, and finding the best way that way, rather than you thinking what would be the best way?
Yeah, at the time, the mainstream approaches to both AI and robotics were very much you work out how to do it, you program in the knowledge, and then have these reasoning modules that try and reason about it, and then it try and work out what to do next. That was the mainstream approach. It turned out to be very brittle. So the work we were doing was part of a wave of trying to find alternatives that were much more biologically based, that were based around adaptive mechanisms, which had various kind of names. One of them was Nouvelle AI.
Nouvelle AI, I like that.
AI.
Nouvelle cuisine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Nouvelle AI. And we were part of that.
And Phil's experiment, along with others, spawned a new field, evolutionary robotics, where researchers would use this new approach to AI that would allow robots to create their own solutions and to evolve.
We did it really seriously for a good 10 years, and there's still bits and pieces going on. But then things stalled a bit as they got technologically more difficult. So what we found was that for relatively simple up to medium difficulty, it worked really well. But getting beyond that, it was going to be really difficult without large teams. And in universities, it's very difficult to get the funding for that.
So the evolutionary approach did work, but it didn't go as far as Phil and his contemporaries believed it would. It's fair to say it didn't lead to the big AI breakthroughs we've seen in recent years. And by the way, neither did the logic-based approaches that were mainstream in the 90s. Instead, it was the development of neural networks which then led to generative AI, the likes of ChatGPT, and the revolution in the field that we're seeing today. So was that it for Phil's gantry robot? Not quite. There were some people who saw something really special in Phil's early work, and they ran with it.
I'm Josh Bongard, and I'm a professor of computer science here at the University of Vermont in the United States.
Are you familiar with the original experiment?
I'm very familiar. So I was actually a student at the University of Sussex in 1999, which was a few years after that experiment was conducted. And I got to see the gantry robot up close and personal and had absolutely no idea what it was.
Were you impressed with it at the time?
I didn't know what to think. It looked like something that had been thrown together. So I wouldn't say that I was impressed. I was intrigued. This thing was making waves. People were talking about it. It was something new, but it was very difficult to understand for myself as a student what was so special about this machine.
Josh graduated and went on to have a successful career of his own in evolutionary robotics, the field that Phil helped start. He eventually ended up as a professor at the University of Vermont. And around 6 years ago, he embarked on a new project with colleagues from Tufts University who were working in an entirely different field, biology.
To start off this collaboration, about 6 years ago, we had a weekly Zoom meeting, and my then graduate student showed some videos of breeding robots, evolving robots that were evolving inside a virtual world. So at this point, we've come a long way from the gantry robot 25, 30 years ago. Now we have cutting edge physics engines that are running inside of supercomputers. So we showed our colleagues some of these videos from these simulated worlds, and what our biology colleagues saw were these sort of weird four-legged virtual robots running around in a virtual world. The next week, when our biology colleagues came to present, they came to the meeting with a single still image, and it wasn't quite clear what was in this image. What we saw was something that clearly had four legs. It seemed to be suspended in fluid. And our biology colleagues explained that what they had built was a sculpture of one of our robots, one of our virtual robots, but they had built that sculpture out of frog skin cells. So what we were looking at in that image was something that's actually only a millimeter across. And the moment he put up that image, there was complete silence on the call. Absolute silence. And then I don't remember who said it, but someone said, "What is that? What are we looking at?" Everybody had a sense that there was something really new here that had never been done before, but it was almost like the gantry robot. It was unclear what we were looking at. You can guess what our computer science question was next, which is, can you get this thing to move?
Josh thought, what if you could use Phil's techniques from the 90s to try out different cell combinations until you get to one that actually moves?
The final step was to see whether the ideas that the AI dreamed up in the supercomputer would actually work in reality. So I remember myself and my graduate student here at the University of Vermont looking at a video, and in that video we saw a physical xenobot actually made from actual frog cells walking along the bottom of the petri dish. And it was hard to imagine at the time what the repercussions of this new technology were going to be. And we're still grappling with all the kinds of things that we can now do with this new approach to building intelligent and safe machines.
Josh and his colleagues created biological robots out of frog cells. They're called xenobots, named after the frog species they originate from. And you can see videos of them online, and they are staggering. They look like tiny chickpeas, and they run around the petri dish together, pushing sand into a pile. Josh says that one day they could function as tiny vacuum cleaners that could clean up microplastics in the sea. Or, if you could find a way of using human cells to do it, then maybe we could have them clean the fur out of our arteries. But that's one for a programme in another 30 years, maybe. And when I asked him, Josh credits a lot of his success to Phil and to the time he spent at Sussex University as a student when he first laid eyes on that strange cuboid gantry robot.
You know, I am forever in his debt. Everything I've done in the last 25 years builds on ideas that Phil started. Some of the best ideas, they go against the grain of common thinking. And as long as that flame can stay alive and there are students and faculty that continue to investigate it, some of those ideas bear fruit.
And this idea of Phil's was based on the idea of evolution that we see in nature. But I wonder if there's a parallel here between the way science works and evolution, that new ideas build on older ones and some things get thrown away and the best bits get kept.
Yeah, great analogy. Absolutely. You know, science and a lot of other human domains of thought, they're a competition. There's an arena. There are these ideas bubbling around. Sometimes they go out of fashion. Sometimes they go extinct. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes the old ideas are the best ideas. They just take a little while to ripen.